Hey everybody, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. I am your host, Blake Morgan, and today we are talking about 4 ways to serve the customer of the future. Let's level set that we've all been through a lot, and many of us don't want to go back to the way things were. I even feel like some days I just can't even remember what happened during COVID. It's all a blur. But those experiences were so visceral that we're all traumatized by what we saw, how we felt, and what happened to society in general. Many of us picked up new habits, and we're not going back to how we lived pre-COVID. Many of you know, had a baby during COVID, and I really changed my whole perspective, even moving. I never thought I would move, but what happened during COVID influenced me and my family so much that we decided we no longer wanted to live far away from family, from extended family. So we're dealing with a reimagined customer, a customer that is reevaluating everything they thought to be true. They're thinking about what is their personal purpose in life. They're reevaluating what was important to them before COVID. And 50% of consumers say that they believe that COVID caused them to rethink their personal purpose. This is from research with Accenture with 25,000 people. I want to establish one fact with you before we dive into these 4 strategies I'm going to provide to you today. The only thing that we are doing, we are not business people. We are not even customer experience strategists. We are not contact center managers. The only thing that we are doing is providing a feeling to a customer. We're all in the business of feelings. So how do we make our customers feel? And many companies really don't know. They don't know how their customers feel. They can't see them. There's no camera to watch them as they get frustrated, as they navigate clunky websites and apps, or have to repeat themselves constantly. And so truly, we are in the feelings business. And on the screen here, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see a few images that illustrate these bad vibes, bad feelings. They can include, as a healthcare worker, having to fill out tons and tons of paperwork when we should literally never have to see a piece of paper in a hospital. How about filling out a clipboard? To me, the clipboard is the one symbol of outdated customer practices. You should never have a clipboard in your office because you should have all that data in your technology stack. You don't need paper anymore. How about that experience of waiting in the doctor's office, basically naked in a tiny piece of paper, waiting and waiting and waiting for the doctor with no ETA on when the doctor will be there? Why can't we have some kind of clock or next in line? Like, even they have that at the DMV, the wait times. I mean, the DMV has that on a healthcare experience going to the hospital. Or inefficiencies in air travel. So many of us, when we fly, we're delayed for reasons that are avoidable. Those reasons can range from mechanical difficulties to, poor staffing, to other delays from other flights. Now with AI, with technology, the communication among airplanes and airport personnel should be so much better that we really shouldn't be delayed as much as we are. And it's gotten worse. Amazon knows they're in the feelings business. They know they are building the most customer-centric company on earth. And the little things in the self-service experience just make Amazon so wonderful. I don't really know where I would be without Amazon, with the ability to just add to my cart so easily, where I don't have to constantly come up with new ideas. I can just go back and see what I ordered last week from the grocery store, or perhaps get a suggestion for something that I need that I didn't even remember I needed, but Amazon remembered. And so they are truly providing so much value just because they're so helpful. How about Tesla, a car completely run on software that knows you, that knows when you're in the car, adjusts to you, doesn't even require gas? The car is incredible. The screen is incredible. I don't believe you can compare any other technology car experience to that of Tesla. How about your Apple Watch, which you probably interact with more than your doctor to manage your health because it tells you your heart rate. And even if you fall down really unexpectedly, your watch will notify the ambulance and send an ambulance to you in addition to notifying your emergency contacts. This happened to my aunt recently, and thank God for that. She's not healthy. She sometimes has problems with her body, with motor skills, and her watch really saved her. How about this incredible revolution of content, of direct-to-consumer content with Apple TV, these shows that make you feel so good because they're just so well written. The TV shows today have the quality that the movies had 30 years ago, where they're like pieces of art. And TV will be gone soon. How about the Peloton, where during COVID, Peloton got so many people moving and working on their, not just physical health, but their mental health. Peloton is an incredible piece of technology that is totally personalized to you. And I should know because I use it 3 times a day. Every day, it's a meditation, it's a bike workout, and it's a weights workout. And I love that Peloton. And I'm not going back to a gym ever again. I don't want to spend the time. I don't want to be exposed to all the germs. And it's actually really expensive. So we're going forward into a world where customers have been impacted by what happened to them through COVID. So many of their favorite brands are technology experiences that just take an experience that people by and large hate, throw out the rules, reconstruct it, and it can become the next Amazon or Apple or Peloton or Hulu or Spotify. These are the world's most beloved customer experiences. And I truly believe when you look at this high stakes experiences framework, if you're watching this podcast, if you're listening, it's basically a graph. And the idea of this graph of the customer experience imperative is that the tougher the thing the customer is going through, the more important it is for you to make their life easier, to reduce friction. And that is what I want you to remember. And that is why so many companies, they try to be customer-centric, but they just can't. Think about the insurance industry, a very old industry that is ripe for disruption. There's a stat that 100% of insurance customers switched in the last year because of customer experience. That is from Publicis Sapient. 100%. Basically, every customer that left an insurer did so because the insurer made their life difficult. And so what is the secret sauce of the world's most beloved companies? I've been studying this stuff for so long, and in the many years that I've been interviewing executives all over the world, flying all over the world, studying the world's most customer-centric companies, what I've learned is that customer experience is not a division, it's not a discipline, it's a decision. But making that decision day in and day out across the company is so rare, it's almost unheard of. And 89% of companies that lead with customer experience perform financially better than their competitors, according to Qualtrics. That's pretty powerful, that ROI. So if we invest in making our customers' lives easier and better, we will financially perform better. If we invest today, we will make money tomorrow. So simple, but not easy. And every single company out there, everybody listening to this, you work at a company that is in the experience economy. Because today it is widely accepted that if you want satisfaction in life as a customer, then you should invest in experiences over things. But sometimes a really good user interface or technology experience is in itself an experience. A customer service interaction that was so simple and easy and fast and painless, that can be an experience. Because increasingly it's not about your product, which I'm sure is a commodity. It's about the experience or the service around the product. And that makes sense given research that illustrates, even from Gartner, that 94% of customers with low effort interactions intend to repurchase. So we're looking to a future where customers expect instant gratification. Customers demand that companies look at what's happening in their communities and they start to put money back into the community. Customers want to see companies that are doing good. We are largely moving towards services and experiences over just buying things. And AI has gotten really good in that we should be creating so many more efficiencies and personalization than we are right now. So we understand that if customer experience is a decision, there are 4 ways to make customer experience a decision. And this comes from my WAYS framework. Number 1, walk a mile in the customer's shoes. Number 2, ask for truth. Number 3, say yes to accountability. Number 4, make small improvements every day. First, walk a mile in the customer's shoes. Everybody listening and watching, I bet that if I went to the place where each and every one of you lives, I would find a blue, a green, and a black trash can. But do you ever think about who takes care of your trash? Where does it go? And what happens to it? There is a guy named James Fish who works at a company that thinks about this all the time called Waste Management. Waste Management has had a very successful run. They do a great job of taking care of your trash. And when the CEO, James Fish, was a younger man, he took advice from people around him, including his father-in-law. And his father-in-law was not a very educated man. He wasn't extremely successful or rich, but he was very wise. And he said, James, if you want to be a successful leader, if you want to be great, you should always walk a mile in your customer's shoes. So James took that to heart, the idea that in order to understand how to be a good leader, how to be service-oriented, you have to really walk that walk for the customer. And when he became CEO, he kept that in mind. And James decided that he wanted to attend the weekly meetings that his employees attended before they headed out on their early morning routes to pick up the trash. And James asked his assistant what time that meeting was. And his assistant said to him, well, there's 2 meetings every week. One is at 8 a.m. and the other one is so early, I'm not even going to bother telling you what time that is. I'll put you on the 8 a.m. And James said, well, actually, what time is that other meeting? And his assistant said, well, it's at 3 a.m. And James said, great, I'll attend that one. And so James attended that 3 a.m. meeting every week because he knew the power of being visible to his employees, that he wasn't above showing up at 3 a.m. when the sun hadn't even risen in the sky, to show that camaraderie, to understand the pain points of his people, because he understands the direct connection between walking a mile in his employees' shoes, who are his customers, with the outcome of the work that they do. There's a direct link between walking a mile in the customer's shoes or the employee's shoes and creating better experiences. And Ollie Bauhouch, the CTO of Sephora, knows that. I met with Ollie a few years ago for a book I was writing, and I interviewed him. And I was so excited to have the chance to interview the executive team from Sephora, because Sephora is one of the most innovative brands in the world. They completely disrupted how we shop for makeup. Sephora came along in the early 2000s and thought that makeup should be playful, it should be fun, because makeup used to be locked behind glass shelves. You couldn't even try anything on without asking permission. And Sephora threw that out and said, we're going to have fun. Makeup is experiential. You should be able to play. And we're going to start using the internet to sell products. And they are always on the forefront of technology innovation, whether that's using augmented reality to allow customers to try looks on via their phone, or whether that's just a really killer CRM and data stack that provides a seamless, zero friction data sharing among the store to the app to the website. It's all personalized. And when I sat down with Ollie, the CTO, I was expecting a list of technologies or some kind of framework, But when I jotted my pen down to paper, all he told me was that he spends a lot of time just doing one thing: listening. And he's thinking about a teenage girl that walks into Sephora and she has such bad acne and she's looking for makeup because she's so mortified by her skin that she's not going to prom. She is not going out with her friends. She's simply hiding in her room on the weekends. And he thinks of her in every technology decision. And so how many of us actually put photos of our customers on the walls of our businesses and really think about that customer every single moment? How many of us really have a customer advisory board or leave an empty seat in a room in a meeting for our customer? And so we really have to think about all the ways we can actually walk a mile in the customer's shoes. Sometimes it's unpleasant. Sometimes it's difficult to get to a customer. But having that experience, being there where the customer is, when they're experiencing the pain point, is much more impactful and powerful than just looking at survey feedback or perhaps recorded calls. Second, ask for truth. In the early 2000s, there was one company that dominated the lucrative wedding dress retail market. This company was so big that by 2004, 1 in every 4 wedding dresses was a David's bridal wedding dress. But this company started to rest on its laurels. They stopped being so aggressive about the customer. They stopped caring about their bride. They got complacent with how innovative their technology was. They weren't providing the bride with an experience that a bride would want on her wedding day. And so the company, about 10 years later, declared bankruptcy. It was actually 14 years later, in 2018. And they brought in a turnaround CEO because before they brought their turnaround CEO in, they had been throwing everything at the wall to see if it would stick. They hired fancy consulting firms and they hired tons of personnel and they just tried everything with these Band-Aids, but nothing worked. And so they found a turnaround CEO named Jim Markham. And Jim walked into David's Bridal in Pennsylvania and he first did one thing. He fired all the consultants. He brought the senior executive team into a room. After firing all the consultants, he rolled up his sleeves, he pulled out a whiteboard, and he said, "We're going to problem solve this together." He did one more thing that was very crucial. He told his executive team that he wanted every single one of them to start reading negative customer reviews of David's Bridal every morning. Every morning at 6 a.m., every employee on Jim's direct team had to read 1- and 2-star reviews of David's Bridal to understand what went wrong. Alongside a digital transformation, things started to move for David's Bridal. Jim implemented some new policies, like even for the wedding dress. Prior to Jim's reign as CEO, wedding dresses didn't even have a garment bag sent home with them. So he created garment bags that would be sent home with wedding dresses. The company went through a full digital transformation, focusing much more on the technology experience of shopping, on e-commerce, on a loyalty program, on thinking about what does the bride need, not just during her wedding, but before and after. So they provided a mobile planning app for the bride and just a much more digital-friendly way to shop. But more important than any of this is just a renewed focus on their customer because they had lost sight of their bride and that relationship had gone sour. So what do you do when you have such a big old company with so much potential that has clearly lost sight of what's important? And I think many of you listening can relate because how did you get here? How did your business get here? Probably by doing a couple things that you do really well. And changing those things is really, really hard. And that's why it's so important to listen to the customer, to really ask for feedback. And Jim Markham knows that because he took a company that had declared bankruptcy. He took this company to be extremely successful, increasing its net promoter score by 40 to 50 points and making the company profitable and bringing David's Bridal back as a brand that women want to buy from. And so I believe that the truth will set you free. That every day you need to talk to a customer, know the ugly stuff, figure out what happened. And you too can gain so much from that insight, because the reason that we often don't ask for feedback is we don't want to feel vulnerable. We don't want to look at someone and say, how am I doing? Because when we ask for feedback, there's a couple things that happens. We might hear something we don't want to hear. We might have to change. We don't want to feel pain. We don't want to have to do something different. And so asking for truth in the right forum is so important to our ability to improve, because truly, if you think about it, the contact center is such a gold mine of insights, because what comes in through the contact center is basically everything you need to fix about your business. It's extremely valuable. But there's that commitment from everyone on the team to knowing the ugly stuff, to looking under the hood, to figure out what are we doing wrong. And all of you watching and listening to this podcast, there is some version of this for you in your business, for your customer teams, even for yourself. And maybe your customers are your employees. Like Amazon, every day they ask one question to all of their employees, and using AI, they sort through all of that data, and that provides valuable insight. And the question is something along the lines of, what can we be doing better to help you do your job? So simple, so effective. Third, yes to accountability. I recently got a call from a client, and they work for a software company. This client is the chief experience officer for the software company, and he was very, very accomplished. He graduated from the top of his class from West Point. He was a captain in the military. He became a chief experience officer for GE. Very successful guy. One day he got a call from one of his clients. This is a B2B software company. And the client of the B2B software company was the chief technology officer for the US military. And the chief technology officer for the US military told my client that he was having some problems with the software. It really wasn't doing what the software company said it would do. The software wasn't working, and it was becoming a problem. And not only that, but the CTO of the military really felt like the software company wasn't doing a great job of customer success. They weren't following up. They weren't checking in. CTO was mad. And he said to my client, this CXO of the software company, you know what? I don't think that you give a shit about us. And my client, the CXO of the software company, was so devastated because he knew, as a US veteran, that he was letting not just the CTO down, but the many, many men and women that serve in the military, along with the many, many people that rely on the military to keep the United States safe. Because I believe in this butterfly effect, that when we do something, everything we do matters and affects other people. And it's not just one person. What we do can affect millions of people. And so every employee, every action they take, every decision matters. And that's why I believe that customer experience, all it is, it's a mindset. It's saying yes to accountability. It's jumping up every morning out of bed, excited to serve somebody. And it's that customer experience mindset that creates this sense of accountability, that I do the right thing even when my customer isn't in the room. I do the right thing even when it's going to take longer or be harder, because my job is not to just click a timesheet. I don't hang my hat up at 5 o'clock when the workday is done. So many of you know that when you feel accountable, you're walking your dog at night, you're in the shower trying to problem solve for your customer. And that is what is required today to compete in this competitive business landscape when so many of us just have commodities and the customer has grown increasingly impatient with companies that don't make their lives easier and better. There's an old legend about Jeff Bezos at Amazon. It was Christmas time, and Jeff Bezos wanted to know what was happening in the contact center because we all know the holidays can be really busy and the contact center can get really congested. So he was holding a meeting with 30 of his top Amazon executives, but he noticed his head of service wasn't there, so he brought his head of service in, and Jeff put him on the spot. Jeff's head of customer service was named Eric. And with 30 executives sitting around a huge table, Eric and Jeff said to him, "Hey, Eric, I want to know what's happening in the call center. How long does it take for a customer to reach a contact center agent?" Eric didn't really know, but he had this look on his face like, I can't tell Jeff Bezos I don't know. So he said, "Yeah, Jeff, it's under a minute, definitely." Jeff said, "Great, let's see." Jeff took out his phone, put that thing on speaker, dialed the number for 1-800-Amazon customer service, and 30 executives sat around with Eric and Jeff, and they waited. 1 minute passed by, and no one picked up the phone. They waited. 2 minutes passed by. People are starting to fidget. They're looking at each other like, what is happening? Eric looks not happy. 3 minutes pass by. Jeff looks enraged. And Eric, the head of customer service, his face is turning a dark shade of beet red. He is perspiring. 4.5 minutes pass by before the head of customer service picks up the phone. "Hello, this is Amazon customer service. How may I help you?" Jeff hangs up that phone. Not long after this meeting, Jeff puts Eric, the head of customer service, on Jeff's Blue Origin rocket ship, and Jeff flies him up into outer space, and no one ever hears from Eric ever again. Well, that's not necessarily what happened, but Eric no longer works at Amazon. And the reason I love this story is if you learn about Jeff Bezos and his rise to become who he is, he has always been so focused on accountability. No one has to tell Jeff to be customer focused. He knows if he invests in long-term decisions, in disruption, in making the customer's life easier and better at every step, that his businesses will grow by leaps and bounds. No one has to tell him to say yes to accountability because he holds himself accountable every day. Because in what world does the richest man in the world, the most well-known, visible, successful CEO in the world care that much about contact center wait times? That is what is required because everybody listening and watching this podcast, when was the last time you called your own contact center or your CEO sat on the phones? There's a stat that less than 1% of contact center voice recordings are listened to. You know, when you call a call center and they say, your call is being recorded for quality assurance, less than 1% of those calls are actually listened to for improvement. And so if we say yes to the hard things, they become so much easier. If we embrace those customers that are difficult, if we figure out where the gaps are in our customer experience. Think of if Jeff Bezos ran your company, what would be different? What efficiencies would he create? How would the culture be different? Fourth, improve a little every day. About 11 years ago, I started meditating. And it was hard to get started. I started doing 10 minutes a day. And 10 minutes doesn't seem like much. But if you hold yourself accountable and you're quiet for 10 minutes every single day, maybe that day it doesn't seem like a big deal. But over weeks, months, years, decades, it can have a great impact. And I best heard this summarized by an author who wrote a book called 10% Happier. And in 10% Happier, the book describes that meditation just makes you 10% more calm every day. And 10% doesn't seem like much, but over time, that can create huge improvements to your life, to your patience with your family. And so how would we take this idea of improving a little every day and apply it to our customer strategies? If we were to just do one small thing a little bit better every day, if we were simply to take one customer offender, one thing that customers hate about our business, and we hacked away at it, if we did 10% every day of our energy, over time, that 10% will have huge cumulative gains. And so often companies say, oh gosh, well, we're just so far from being customer-centric, I don't even know where to start. Just start somewhere and start improving a little bit every day. Find out, what are your biggest customer offenders? You can do that by walking in the customer's shoes. You can do that by asking for truth, because customers want to share their experiences with you. But you have to ask them and create the environment for that. So if we simply focus on walking a mile in the customer's shoes, asking for truth, saying yes to accountability, and those small improvements every day, what would that look like if we had made small improvements in customer experience every day? They say at Forrester that high growth companies are 2.5 times more likely to focus on solving customer problems. So if we start with the thing that nobody wants to deal with, often customers are not listened to. No one really wants to hear where they're struggling, but there's so much gold in that. In fact, I believe that customer experience is like this treasure chest, and it's actually in our front yard. We don't even know it's there. And every day we leave our house and we walk by it without ever even looking at it. But customer experience is this treasure chest that we didn't even know, we don't even see it. But once we start to wake up to focusing on the ugly customer problems, we start to reap the benefits of this treasure chest of complaints and challenges. So I'd like you to think about, what are the ways that you could walk a mile in your customer's shoes? How can you ask for truth in more ways and more frequently? What are the ways you're not saying yes to accountability or your teams? And how can you improve a little every day? And then if you start measuring your company by that, what's measured gets improved. But often we're measuring the wrong things. We're thinking about success in a short-term way, when we really need to be looking at the horizon of what's coming next. Because so many of our industries that have not been disrupted will be disrupted. So if you think about what we talked about today, think about, what are some of the next steps that you could apply at your own company? And I'd love for you to workshop this with your colleagues. Firstly, have you figured out what is your company's customer experience mindset? Seriously, how do executives talk at your business? What is your company's mission statement? What are you measuring in the contact center? How often do your teams talk to customers? Are customer-facing executives even trained and onboarded in a way into a customer-focused culture? Second, have you walked through the customer journey? Again, I ask people all the time, when was the last time you contacted customer service? When was the last time you went through all of your digital channels? Or maybe you need to think about what digital channels you are not providing and how you can do a better job. Where can you automate? Where would people help enhance the customer journey so customers didn't have to wait on hold? Number 3, we've established that what's measured gets improved. How are you measuring success? Are your benchmarks tied to reducing friction, to customer satisfaction, to understanding, did we actually solve a problem? Did we do our job? Do you like this company? In fact, there's a new way to measure your success as a company that really has to do with referral rate. So how many of your new customers come in through referrals? And once you figure that number out, you'll know how well you're doing, because it turns out that the customers that you bring in because you did a good job and a current customer referred you to a new customer, these customers are so much more valuable to your company. They spend more money, they cause less problems, they create more value. So we really have to look at how are we even measuring how good we are at customer experience. Number 4, are your departments aligned around customer experience? Have you gotten together with your senior teams and agreed on a customer strategy, on a definition for what customer experience looks like, and then a shared view that this is something we all want to work toward? And then individually going toward each business department, each business unit, and figuring out where the gaps are, going backward from the experience and saying, who owns this piece of the journey? Because it's broken and we have to fix it. So that alignment, and not a competitiveness in the company, but an alignment around the customer, is everything. I told you earlier, the truth will set you free. So what are the top 3 customer offenders? Do you know what they are? What are the common complaints customers have in dealing with your brand? If you don't know, how can you find out? How can you create a task force that can help you find out what are we doing wrong and how can we begin to block and tackle and make these experiences better, easing stress for customers? And lastly, how about a customer advisory board? How often do you talk to customers? Who are these customers? Is it enough variation in this customer advisory board? And who is listening? And then what do you do with that data? I believe if you do these 6 things based on the WAYS framework, so the WAYS framework again, walk a mile in the customer's shoes, ask for truth, say yes to accountability, small improvements every day. And then you take these steps, figuring out your customer experience mindset, number 1. 2, have you walked through the customer journey? Number 3, find out how are you measuring success, and is it tied to something that drives customer experience? Number 4, are you aligned with other departments on customer experience? Number 5, figure out what are the top 3 customer offenders. And number 6, launch a customer advisory board. There's so much misinformation about customer experience and what it is. Many companies just try and throw Band-Aids at a problem, but they don't understand that customer experience, it's something that every employee has to decide they care about for themselves. It is in the culture, it is in the language, it is in the priorities of the company. Customer experience is not a division, it's not a discipline. Customer experience is a decision. And if you make customer experience a decision based on these 4 ways, you will have more customers than you know what to do with. For more ideas and content like this, please feel free to subscribe to the Modern Customer Podcast where you heard this, or check out my website at blakemichellemorgan.com. Thank you for listening to this episode.